All right, let's get this started. So the thing I wanted to talk about today is one of the causes of our suffering, if not the most important cause of our suffering, which is as humans, we have a need to impose structure onto the world. It's for safety. It is to make us feel like we have things figured out, but it most definitely blinds us and then causes a lot of our suffering. So what do I mean? There's a lot of different ways that the Eastern philosophies taught me this. One of them was basically to live life without expectations. Okay. The other one is when they say that I am not my body and I am not my mind. All of these are pointing to the same direction. Essentially, we impose structure on the world, and I'll give you an example. Let's say that I say that I have a goal to get to the top of some mountain, and I, in my head, have decided how things are going to go. Okay, so imagine this perfect straight lines of this is how things are going to go, and every time that I fall out of that expectation, I feel as though I'm losing something. I feel as though I might not make it to my goal. But from the beginning, the goal was imaginary. The expectations that I set were imaginary, meaning that my suffering is completely imaginary. Or from breaking imaginary rules that I've made up. Okay? And hopefully, the more you hear me talk about this, the more you'll kind of see the pattern, right, of this unnecessary imaginary suffering. So another one is, for example, let's say I skydive, okay, and I consider myself a skydiver. Now imagine that one day I lose my leg. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a skydiving incident. Maybe it's not. The point is that I lose my leg. I can no longer skydive. Which is not true, by the way. I'm pretty sure I can figure out how to skydive, but let's just pretend that I now cannot skydive. Put this up a little bit. So I might say, well, now I can't be a skydiver, and I might be upset, miserable actually, and I can focus on what I've lost. But this is where that Eastern philosophy comes in handy, where when they say, I am not my body and I am not my mind. If you stop thinking about this thing you thought you were, which was a skydiver, you might see the possibilities or the new possibilities, the few possibilities of the future. Like, for example, maybe I could end up owning a drop zone, so my own skydiving location. That would have never happened had I not lost my leg and had to stop skydiving. Because if I had kept skydiving, then I wouldn't have started a business because it would have affected my skydiving. So that's the pattern that you're going to see, right? Once you remove all of these imaginary things, you start to see the world a little bit more clearly. You start to suffer less, and you start to see more opportunities. And I'm sorry if I'm ranting. I'm sorry if I'm going all over the place. I have tried to do, and this is kind of a side rant, I've tried to do this YouTube channel where I write it down, I rewrite it down, and it's just not working for me. I've decided that I think it's better if I just talk to the camera. It might be a little bit longer, and it might have a little bit more rambling, but that's what works for me. And what I feel is probably going to happen is that with time, I will just get better at communicating the points I'm trying to make. I will probably remake this video in the future. So it doesn't really matter. Once again, I stopped filming because I had an idea of what it would look like for me to make YouTube videos. And as I fell out of that, I made myself suffer. I was imagining that, like, oh, this is not going to work. I'm putting way too much time into making these videos, and I have the point clearly in my head, but writing it out isn't working. And there's little things that I will read or people's perspectives that I'll hear that will snap me out of this every once in a while. And that's one of them was basically me reading this book and realize it was about writing, writing well. And one of the things he mentions is that the way some writers write is actually just through dictation, meaning that they just talk to the computer and the computer writes it down for them. They're not even typing, like they're not even writing, they're speaking. And so that made me realize, why did I impose on myself the idea that in order to work my ideas out, they have to be on paper or they have to be typed out? Why can't they be spoken? And so that's the point of me just making this and not thinking about too much about it. Anyways, but let's keep going. So back to the analogy of like the goal of going up to the mountain. Okay, let me gather myself. Let's say that you're going up the mountain, and then around the middle of the mountain, okay, you find a paradise. Okay, now the point of going to the top of the mountain maybe was because it was a beautiful view up there. But you get to the middle, somewhere in the middle, there is this beautiful paradise. And now you're in a bit of a predicament because your goal was to get to the top. And so you'll find yourself not enjoying the beauty that you have in front of you because it isn't the goal. Which, once again, why is that the goal? It was imaginary to begin with. You use that goal because, once again, it's structure. You need direction. You need to feel like you're heading somewhere. That's what we're looking for when we identify ourselves as whatever label you want to come up with. I am blank, and I do blank, and I spend my time with blank people who do the same blank things that I do. But once again, all of this is suffering. So this obviously leads to the question, well, fine, what am I then? Okay, now I could just tell you what the Eastern philosophies say, which is you are awareness. Okay, and I, by the way, agree with that. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to get to the end of this. Okay, and I'm not going to explain so much what it means to be awareness and not to be your body and not to be your mind. What you want is what do I do? What do I do? Because the whole point of the structure was I had a direction. I know I'm heading that way. The whole point of the structure was I know who I am. It feels comfortable. I always compare it to, for example, like when you're a kid and you're scared and then you hide under the blanket. There's this feeling of safety that comes over you, but you know it's not real. You have to know deep inside that it's not real. If a monster really wanted to get to you, a blanket is not going to stop them. And so the structure that we impose on reality is like said blanket. It makes you feel safe. It makes you feel like good, like there's that you're okay. Everything's going to be okay. It's not real. Okay. So then once again, so what do? This is where I applied first principles thinking to life. Now, when you're first born, the first thing you're going to encounter, the first concept is going to be skills. Okay? You need to communicate. You need to be able to crawl, walk, right? You need to be able to travel. So communication and travel. And then eventually, or even almost all at the same time, it's difficult to decide which one really happens first, but we know for a fact it's skills. The third one ends up being like being able to eat and being able to drink, or even, and that translates to being able to find food and then find water, right? Eventually. But those are the first things, it's skills. Then the other thing is going to be character, okay? And this has been called different things throughout time. It's been called, character strengths, character traits, virtues. I do like virtues, but I feel like it means different things to people. There's philosophy virtues, there's religious virtues, but the point is, I'll give you examples. Curiosity, okay, open-mindedness, I believe discipline, which falls in the category of temperance, to be honest. Self-control is also under the category. So discipline, self-control would really be under the category of temperance. And things like open-mindedness and curiosity would be under the category of like wisdom. But follow me here. So you have the skill of like, you're developing the skill of trying to walk or trying to crawl or trying to communicate. And you can do this patiently or impatiently, okay? And the beautiful thing about these character traits is that everyone in the world can agree that you are a better person for yourself and for those around you when you practice these character traits, okay? When you are patient, everything's better. Okay, everything's just better. Impatience doesn't work, and the argument against being patient is sometimes you just got to go for it. Do not confuse patience for lack of urgency. Okay, somebody who is driving on the road and going really slow does not mean they're patient. It means they have nowhere to go. That is a lack of urgency, which brings me to even note that one of the things that they also have in common is not just the universal acceptance of them, but also the fact that they're usually painful. You're usually, there's some effort involved in them, right? Like, if you're finding it very easy to be patient, I can assure you, you're not being patient. That means you lack urgency, which is not good. There should be like a, man, I really want to go for it, but the moment calls for patience, right? Waiting, control of my emotions, control over myself in general. Okay, let's not get too picky with it. And curiosity is another great example, right? To ask questions. In that case, we're talking about walking, but there's more interesting things to be curious about. But anyway, so that's why the whole point I'm getting to is when we think about life from first principles, it comes down to skills and it comes down to character, the character with which you perform those skills. And if you really do those things, eventually you can provide value to yourself and to others. Okay. So if the question is, if I don't have structure, if I do not know what I am, who I am, right? Meaning that then I'm not going to come up with a label, which you shouldn't. Then what do I do? And this is where I say you take those character traits and you just practice them. Okay? So what would life look like if you did this? So maybe I'm a skydiver. Okay, we'll go back to the skydiver example. I've been thinking about skydiving a lot lately anyway, but so I'm a skydiver, and what I do is I pursue my curiosity. So it could just be a question of a specific skill that I'm trying to master. How do I perform said skill? Okay, and now it gives me a question, and I just pursue that question. Who do I ask about this? Okay, is there coaching available? Okay, perfect. Now, as I'm skydiving, I notice an issue. I don't like the way this helmet kind of moves a little bit here. Maybe it is loose. Maybe I'll tie it, whatever. I just got to get a smaller helmet. But I start to notice little tiny things that I don't like. I don't like that. I was going to start mentioning skydive terminology, but basically, I don't like this component here. I want to move it there. And then I ask myself, well, why hasn't anybody done that? And so now I pursue this curiosity. Are there people who make helmets? Who makes helmets? And so this is what it looks like. There is never people want to start off with, I'm going to start a skydiving helmet company, right? You start with the goal up here, and now I'm going to walk towards it. No. If you live life this way, which is, well, I'm telling you, you'll suffer less. What you do is you just pursue the curiosity and let it guide you there. Who knows where it goes? And then this is why I'm saying, so far right now we're thinking, oh, this is going to go towards, he's going to build a helmet company. Maybe. So I go and I decide who makes helmets, whatever, and I want to pursue that curiosity. So then I go meet the person who makes helmets, and we try to make this helmet, and it works, whatever. But we don't really make any sales. There's not a lot of interest. It ends up just being something that I prefer for my own skydiving. But then I meet this person, right? That person that helped me with the helmet, and we're getting to talking, and we decide, hey, you know what? That didn't work, but there's this other component that we could make work, right? And so then we build that component, and that business takes off. Okay. The point here that you'll notice is that if you try to see where it's going, what you do is you blind yourself to the possibilities, and then you start to be hard on yourself. Once again, these are all this just making yourself suffer. You start to like, oh, why is this not working? What am I doing wrong? There's something wrong with me. No, you're imposing too much structure onto reality. Just pursue the curiosity. If the curiosity says to go that way, stop trying to impose, this straight line. Just go that way. And in this case, notice first we went into skydiving out of curiosity. Then we decided helmets, started to pursue the curiosity of helmets. Then we meet a person and we think, well, maybe we're going to build a helmet company. But no, it just so happens that I had to get into skydiving to then be curious about helmets, to then meet this person so that we can then start a company that has nothing to do with helmets. Okay? And then let's say that one, it blows up and the guy betrays me. Okay? And so then once again, I start thinking, oh, but I'm this component manufacturer. This is my business. This is what I know. I've dedicated 10, 15 years to this. And this is where all my money has come from. And once again, you start to feel it ripped out from you. You start to feel like you're falling out because you, once again, imposed this reality. Okay? No. Let's say he betrays you. You have falling out. You save, you get out of the business with what little money you can. And then you think, well, you know what? A couple of years ago, I had this idea that I didn't pursue because we were building this company. And so now you pursue that. And then that one blows up. Or it doesn't blow up. It just leads you to find the next person, or the next curiosity or the next hobby, which then leads to the next curiosity. You get my point. Like, I'm not going to drive this into you that hard, okay? But those are the two versions of life that you can live. The first one is that you keep trying to impose this reality, and once again, you're going to feel this moment of safety. You're going to feel like, oh my God, I finally know who I am. This is great. This is what I've been waiting for. Once again, this is fake. It's not real. This is just like putting a blanket over a little kid who thinks the monster's going to get him, but now can't because they're under the safe blanket. And then you're going to have the blanket pulled right off of you. Okay? Something's going to happen. But that something happening, you need to understand nothing happened. You're just moving, right? The problem is that you've moved outside of the lines, right? Or you moved outside of the blanket. It was imaginary to begin with, okay? I would suggest you learn how to not even have it. And the way you can do that is by a couple ways, but just keep saying, like, if you ever heard the story of the farmer and his son, and it goes something along the lines of like, there's a farmer and he lives on the farm with his son, whatever, and one day I think their horse escapes. And so the villagers come over and they're like, oh my God, that's bad news. And he says, well, maybe. And then the next day the horse comes back with a bunch of other horses. And so they come over and they say, oh my God, that's such great news. Like all these horses came back. And he says, maybe, right? And then while his son is training the new wild horses, one of the horses kicks his leg and breaks it, right? And so the villagers come over and they're like, oh my God, your son, he broke his leg. That's such bad news. And he said, maybe. Then the next day, the military comes and they're trying to draft soldiers, and his son doesn't get drafted. Why? Because of the broken leg. And so the villagers come over and is like, what great news, he didn't get drafted into the war because of the broken leg. And he said, Maybe. Now, the point of the story, right, and which I'm pretty sure you're getting at is, one, there's really nosy neighbors. There's horribly nosy neighbors. But the second thing is that you don't know what's going to happen, okay? But what I can assure you is that if you keep imposing structure into the future or on yourself, every time that you, just because this is life, this is how it happens, you step outside of those imaginary lines, that imaginary structure you created, you will suffer. You will feel as though you're losing something, even though you lost nothing. No one promised you that this was going to happen just because you said, I want to make this happen. Okay? Pursue curiosities. Pursue things with discipline. You know, pursue things with an open mind. Think of, like, go look up what the character traits are. I'm gonna make a video on the character traits. I think probably after this, but look them up. Okay, temperance. Just you'll see what I'm saying. I'll make another one for that. But yeah, practice your character traits. I'll leave it at that.